Guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, with episode 1 entitled Days Gone By of what will, I hope, be my great deep dive into the world of what is The Walking Dead, an AMC production spawned by the imaginativeness of Robert Kirkman and his graphic novelizations, which Frank Darabont just happened to pick up a copy of this and fell in love with it and realized very quickly that this was the way he was going to finally achieve that small little aim of his, and that is working in this genre, the world of the zombie, which might be a good place for me to start here in terms of the angles, where I'm coming from, why I'm being driven into this, why I even wanted this for Father's Day to begin with, which I had asked for. I thought it was finally time to do a deep dive, not necessarily like this, but then that sort of came along with it, if you know what I mean. But the zombie movie, and this is just a little bit of the tip of the iceberg of things I have in my collection, but you know, everything from the cheesiest, schlocky Italian cinema, of course, some Bruno Mattei goodness here with Hell of the Living Dead, right from my teenage years, man, video shelf, renting VHS tapes, man, from Growl, Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, you know, just maybe one of the great zombie films of all time. Such a great thing. For me personally, though, man, it does not get any better than 1979's Zombie by Lucio Fulci, which really is the springboard into a very short era but intense era of filmmaking that very few directors ever get to achieve, including the Gates of Hell trilogy, man. Just some really good stuff there. But this is where I lean, man. Usually the argument is between Dawn of the Dead by George A. Romero, of course, and Zombie as the two potentially greatest zombie films ever. I lean just slightly towards this one. But Dawn, man, Dawn's right there, man. Dawn is, man. But this series, The Walking Dead, though, is very heavily rooted in Night of the Living Dead, and the opening shots of the episode. A nod to the stretch of roadway that we go up here in the opening scene of Night is very reminiscent of that when we see Rick driving down that stretch of Cascade Palmetto Highway, which is very, I might say, another interesting connection is I live here in Georgia, and so this stuff, man, I'm watching this last night with my boys for the up 10 time, but we're watching it in black and white last night. And I don't know, I guess I just noticed the sign when Rick comes to a stop, and as he notices the tractor trailer turned over and whatnot, he starts to see the sign, Cascade Palmetto. I'm like, we drive up that stretch. I knew that stretch looked somewhat familiar to me. And the intersection as well, as, you know, always go through that intersection. But I think, let's see, Fairburn, Mansfield, Austell are the three main counties, plus downtown Atlanta, which we get a little bit of in episode 1. So another reason why I come at this, Gail, I think Gail Ann Hurd, the producer of the show, her roots go deep with another icon of B-era film, especially in the 80s, and that is, of course, Roger Corman. She is an assistant line producer, I think, on Humanoids from the Deep, and so there is a, you know, another piece of intimateness with me, that I come to at this, the Roger Corman connection through Hurd. But then there's K&B, right? The work of Greg and Nicotero, who does like 37 episodes on this thing. But as him and Robert Kurtzman, Howard Berger, and K&B first formed in 1988, but their work began a lot earlier than that. You know, you just think of the work on Evil Dead 2. You think of what they did on, along with Mark Shostrom, on Phantasm 2. Of course, who can ever forget Intruder, one of the greatest grocery store slashes in history. Of course, Day of the Dead, man. Dawn, of course, right? And the work of Tom Savini with that as well. But another connection, too, I come at this with is Frank Darabont himself. Perhaps the one film that I'm most engaged with, adapted from a Stephen King novel, The Mist, and this is the Broom edition. Of course, that leads me into black and white. This is the black and white cut of The Mist, which is just absolutely beautiful. And I love Darabont's whole view of, you know, wanting to bring back black and white as a means of viewing worlds. And this is, we talk about world building, and I almost said The Walking Dead is a great exercise in building a world on the small screen over the course of ultimately 11 seasons, but then we got all the spin-offs. The only one of the spin-offs that really intrigues me, although I have not watched it yet, is Daryl's spin-off. Eventually I may just come to that and look at that. We'll see how far that stretches. And of course, you know, just having this, of course, helps. I believe in physical media. Physical media matters is a nice, is a phrase that Jason over at Horrific Nightmares is always constantly waving the banner of, and we talk about this stuff via body bags and just across our videos. The importance of physical media. I would never do something like this if I was streaming it all the time. I just wouldn't do it. But because I can hold it, I have it in my hand, I can open it up and pull the discs out and dive right in. Now, the DVD, unfortunately, as I said earlier, I think I'm probably not going to have quite as much in there as I would with a Blu-ray set, say. The black and white cut of Days Gone By was scrubbed out for whatever reason. So as I said, me and my boys watched it last night. We just didn't color off the screen, and it was an incredible viewing. Now, it's not going to be Darabont's, you know, starting with nothing and filling it in with all the blacks and the whites and the grays, the silvers. Not like you get with his edition of The Mist per se, but just turning the color off your TV set, and you can, even with our smart TVs, we can fiddle around a little bit and make it, you know, look to some degree how it would look watching his cut as it is on the Blu-ray set. And so we watched it. It was beautiful. Really does open up that world in black and white a lot more. Now, yeah, obviously missing color, you know, you're going to miss some of the effects. But we also often talk about how in the world of some pretty poor CGI, not here in The Walking Dead, I might say, but as it is used, but generally speaking, black and white, you take a movie like The Thing prequel, some really horrible CGI, but if you watch the movie in black and white, it sort of negates some of that stuff. But anyways, Days Gone By, this episode. So let's just jump right into this, I guess. I just want to, you know, get across my love for the genre, my love for zombie genre, for those moving pieces involved ultimately with this world that is going to unfold as I walk through it, which I hope you stay with me. I hope I stay the course and life doesn't intervene in some crazy way. It hasn't so far with Space 1999. I was able to complete that. I'm 3 seasons into the X-Files, and that seems to be going well. And I hope the same for this. But Days Gone By, first drops. This is the first point I want to just emphasize. October 31st, 2010, Halloween. I never realized that until I started my little mini deep dive into this. But how awesome is you get a TV show like this with a company like AMC that is dedicated to getting this thing not only off the ground, but stay the course. As well as, I mean, obviously, as we travel along, we're gonna see some things that you know, are a little bit bothersome, I guess. I do not come at it from being the graphic novel, like a nerd, and I say that with the greatest amount of respect. I just haven't read it, and so I've heard Kirkman talk a little bit on the extras and whatnot, read a little bit of some of the things that he has said. I appreciate that, but maybe that might help me as I walk through this, not allowing that to sort of weigh me down a little bit, and not in a bad way, but because I'm seeing this specifically from the varying areas that I've already suggested I'm coming to this with, might help me to point out some things positively that maybe instead I would be coming at it negatively if I was like steeped in this graphic novel. At some point, I want it, and I want to read it. But this first episode, Days Gone By, as I said, October 31st, 2010, written, produced, in part there, Frank Darabont directing. Unfortunately, it's the only one that he does. I wish he would have guested on a few. Now, I know by season 2 he's out of the picture, unfortunately. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I wish, or at least more commentaries. We'll see if he applies any commentaries. I did listen to his opening commentary on Days Gone By, and that was great. I really got a big kick out of it. As we sort of jump into this, the opening shot, of course, is Cascade Palmetto Highway, and we see Rick on this sort of deserted stretch of highway. I was just thinking about my brother-in-law's house for a minute, down there in Palmetto, down that way. Anyways, that stretch of highway. Listening to Frank Darabont talk about how it was shot in a 70s sort of stylized way. It is really apparent. I'm really into the 70s era. I was born in 70s, so growing up, lost count of how many times to the drive-in. That was just sort of what we did. That was a staple of life, was going to the drive-in as a kid. But the shootout that occurs and just how he shoots it, not only shot in 16 millimeter, but how they shoot it in terms of style, really does. It's really unfortunate that he will be, not part of this for the long stretch, or a much longer stretch. He's credited for it in totality, but it's too bad he doesn't hang around longer. Thankfully, K&B, Greg Nicotero, I can't wait to get into his, but how this opens up, the things that Frank wanted to emphasize, whether it's just the humanity of it. We get this opening shot, we meet our first zombie, the bunny slipper little girl who reaches down and picks up a teddy bear. That's just incredible. And then of course, we kind of flash back and we're in the hospital. We're with him in the shootout, right, with him and Shane, and how all that goes down, and how he ultimately ends up in a hospital. And we sort of kind of get, even before that, a nice conversation in the patrol car between him and Shane, and just really kind of comes across in their friendship, how close-knit they are. Of course, there are things dramatically that are coming down the road that we'll have to deal with in terms of some of the plot structure involving not only him and Shane, but his wife, his son Carl, his wife Laurie. But we just get a nice, beautiful setup to the series at large in terms of relationships, the humanity. Morgan will come across, but he's that shootout. We see how he gets shot. I was impacted last night more than any, I think, when he tells Shane, "Don't tell my wife." When he gets shot initially, "Don't tell her this happened." And then unfortunately, his attention is more on Shane, and they don't see the other guy get out, and of course he's shot. And that's the reason why we're suddenly with him in the hospital, and he's having sort of memories of Shane there visiting, bringing the flowers and whatnot. Eventually he'll wake up, and it's so weird, it's eerie. He'll wake up, and still in the midst of this sort of conversation, he might be remembering, thinking he's still in that mode, when in fact he's actually woke up from a coma. I'm pretty sure he was in a coma. And he realized, when he looks over and he sees the flowers that Shane had brought are dead, he realizes very slowly but surely that things are different here. Something's amiss. Something is wrong. Now, that I have to mention, this shot where he wakes up, of course, it's reminiscent of 28 Days Later and how that opens up, but even more, Day of the Triffids. If you've never seen the original Day of the Triffids, that is an amazing film. Opens up much the same way. And so Rick, so we kind of get his life in in what was, and now we're with him now, waking up into this nightmare, which is pretty impactful. The transition from the prior world to the new world, I think, is done pretty good in the Dawn of the Dead remake. That transition period that happens when they go to bed and they wake up and they're just in a whole new world. It's pretty good, man. And as he makes his way, of course, out of the hospital into the outside, of course, makes his way home. Of course, with the litter of body bags, which I think is a little slight nod to Zombie, with just the white sheets wrapped up around the bodies, which I thought was interesting. Not sure how conscious that was, but makes his way home, which is absolutely just terrifying in the sense that you don't know what's going on. You don't know what the world is you just woke up into, and your family's gone. There's no trace. You don't even know if they're alive or not. And there's that great moment where he just is on the floor, just all, kind of just lost in a state of just misery, not knowing. But kind of starts to get his thing together, walks outside, doesn't know it's a walker yet, but sees the walker out on the road and sits there on the steps. And of course we have Morgan's son, Dwayne. Great kid, man, watching this kid act. We see him slowly come up behind him with the shovel. He thinks he's a walker, takes him, knocks him over the head, which is pretty segues in the time that he has with Morgan and Dwayne. And then you got that whole set of dynamics with the loss of his wife, but it's continually he's having to deal with it because she keeps coming home, and that's eerie. That she'll come up and actually look in the keyhole or the doorbell thing, whatever, or the peephole, whatever. That whole idea, and that rings in Dawn of the Dead, right? Why did they come back to this mall? It was a significant place in their lives. It was an important place in their life. And so there's a lot of callbacks to a lot of these things, right? And eventually, Morgan will sort of give him the layout of what's happening. It's kind of hard to digest all of this at once, but ultimately we'll move from there to the sheriff's station where he was, where he worked at, and there's a nice scene in there when they all showered up probably for the first time in weeks or to a month or whatever. When we see them exit the place. Once we see Rick in his sheriff uniform, we can see that the transition from the bed in the hospital to that point, he's kind of got, his perspective where it sort of needs to be, and just placing this, his sheriff, his uniform back on. It just gives him that sense of structure, right, that he desperately needs in a world where there is no structure. And so, we go from that to them parting ways, but with walkie-talkies so they can stay in contact. And, he takes Morgan's lead in the hope that there's some sort of refugee camp or something in Atlanta, the CDC, of course, in Atlanta. Okay, worst thing to ever do in this world is go anywhere near a city. All that is like an anthill that's been stepped on. And, there is the hope, something there is there. And so, of course, this will be the first major mistake he makes. Thank God he gets out of it, though the horse does not, which is a great nod to George A. Romero's Survival of the Dead, and the fact that in this world, it would seem, these zombies go after pretty much anything and everything, man, in terms of consumption. That's always been a weird line of, usually it's just people, and then, people started to, incorporate elements of, allowing them to go after. The only thing, too, I'm thinking about in this episode, I don't recall any real fat zombies anywhere, and I know that was something Frank Darabont mentioned, that, watching old zombie films, zombies always tend to be, not a lot of meat on them, man. Pretty scrawny, thin. But you got that infamous opening scene of Zombie, Lucio Fulci's Zombie, in the Fat Zombie, and that is freaking terrifying, man. If you've never seen Lucio Fulci's 1979 zombie flick, Zombie, dude, I'm telling you, that opening scene, man, that zombie, that movie might have some of the most terrifying zombie moments of anything, hands down. Now, we're going to walk through this 11 seasons, and there are going to be some moments, I'm sure. Just recently, I had found the episode that was sort of a callback to zombie, or maybe just Italian zombie films, where you all probably remember this, where the zombies pour out of the sand mound. I'm trying to think where I was going with that. I had a specific thought, but anyhow, there are nods to Italian cinema, but I don't know if we'll see any like overly obese fat zombies. I'm hoping so. But those zombies in that particular episode were a great callback to the Italian idea of what a zombie ought to look like. And that's always been varying, differences across the world of how we see zombies, right? Whether it's George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, to say Burial Ground. I should have pulled that off my shelf. This realistic crusty, where you just take in, as part of your not prosthetics in a sense, but when you just like take mud and worms and everything, and you just actually apply them as makeup, has a pretty terrifying look about it. I think part of what I was going to say a minute ago is, I'm sure there are going to be moments along the 11 seasons that are going to be like, oh man, that was an incredible throwback to this or that, or that was pretty terrifying, that was creepy, that was this or that was that. I'm hoping to get that along the way. So partly of where I'm coming through, and just to wrap this up, I guess, real quick, and my episodes probably won't be quite this long, but this is the first one, and I want to get a lot out. Whatever was at the top of my, and if you knew my sheet of lists, man, I probably haven't barely tapped it, but once he gets into Atlanta, of course, great scene. He has a horse, he runs out of gas, tries to get gas, finds a horse, and that is a great moment where he looks through the window and sees where a guy has apparently killed his wife, taken his own life, with the written on the wall, God forgive us, I think was what was written. So he gets a horse, and that's a great scene. Gets into Atlanta, he comes around the corner, and of course it's just a wall of zombies, man. And he's in trouble right there. Tries to exit quickly, can't. Is cornered, trapped on all sides, which reminds you a lot of this opening scene in Day of the Dead. And finds himself crawling under a tank, and for just a brief second, it seems as though the only way out is to take his own life. And then he sees the open entranceway into the bottom of the tank. I was just thinking, I was in the military. I wasn't around tanks a lot, but I'm just wondering if those things actually exist. Anyways, so he climbs up in, closes the bottom hatch. Of course, we're trapped with a real zombie inside. Takes that out, but in the case of just shooting off around inside the tank, it does not go off well. He crawls out the top for a moment. The zombies are coming up. He gets back down. He's just contemplating, not sure where his mind is exactly at. And then, of course, the radio comes on, and I think we're hearing. Who are we hearing for the first time? Glenn. I think we're hearing Glenn for the first time. I think he's the one on the radio. If I'm wrong, yeah, excuse me, forgive me. And I guess real quick, in terms of characters that we'll get to see for quite a while. Rick, Laurie's wife, Carl's son, Shane, of course, Morgan, Dale. But in the coming episodes, we'll start to see a lot more come in. And then the other thing I'm going to look at a lot too is guest appearances, like is it Rooker? Is it Michael Rooker? That's in the episode 2. just an astounding actor. Henry, Portrait of the Serial Killer. So along the way, guest appearances as well. The story as it develops and carries forward. But I think the effects. I'm gonna be looking at certain things more than other things. The cinematography is something I always think about when I'm watching something. But so as I just wrap this first episode up, again, these episodes, I don't plan on being this long. And if you stayed the course, thank you. I appreciate it so much. 15, 17 minutes is usually my average for an episode, sometimes shorter, sometimes long. It just really depends on the nature of the content of what jumps out at me personally. Remember, like I said, I was born in 1970. By the time the 80s roll around, I'm 10, and this world is really just opening up to me in terms of the elements that go into work for this show. This show comes at it's kind of like the natural outgrowth of all that was good in the 80s. As I grew up cinematically, in terms of special effects, practical effects. Of course, got some ingenious use of CGI here. Stargate, I think, is the company that provides the visual effects. And just the seamless use, or seamless collaborative effort between visual and practical, like the bicycle zombie girl. Just amazing. And you don't get to see that a lot, that sort of collaborative work between two worlds coming in together, and it's done pretty seamless, done pretty well. So and that's pretty much the first episode. I hope you're in for the long haul. I hope life doesn't inject in a way that tosses me off not being in for the long haul, but my intention is to run the course. First season's only 6 episodes, so the next one I do believe is entitled Guts, so that ought to be fun. And what last thing, just the crane shot at the end, the seamless use of a crane shot lifting up from the tank in the air, and then the transition to a visual effects shot in CGI. It's just pretty seamless and pretty amazing. There's some good work going on here early on, and I hope to see that over the course of all 11 seasons. So anyways, it's 27, almost 28 minutes. Thanks just for the support, and as I launch this, comment, hit that sub if you don't mind. It always helps. The like button always helps, and comment things that you want to hear me comment on, perhaps, or certain episodes that you love, or those that you do have criticisms of. Why? Even shows coming up ahead, things that I ought to look for, perhaps. A comment down below are always helping. I'll read them and I answer them. I don't think there's a comment I've never not answered. So anyways, as always, and one last thing, I kept saying, this is the last thing. Customarily, I always end my videos off with Go Bills. Huge Buffalo Bills fan, but I thought since I'm starting a brand new show, I will always end these things off with, since I'm a huge Georgia Bulldog fan, looking forward to the new season that is coming right around the corner. I'm just going to have it always end off, unlike my other videos, I'll end off here with Go Dogs.
This is not a dream. Not a dream. It might be useful to